Ricci tonight, a renewed plea for tips on the murders of Toronto billionaires Barry and Honey Sherman.
I think the kids are doing the right thing by continuing to keep this story alive, the investigation alive.
It was 5 years ago this week that the couple was found murdered in their mansion. Now their son is increasing the reward in hopes of new information. Plus,
I stand back at the subway, I look to see who's around me, I look to see where the cameras are in the subway.
a spate of random attacks on the TTC and downtown, and why they've left some feeling on edge. And
hey, ho, ho, Ford's cuts have got to go.
Dozens demonstrated outside a Toronto hospital today, demanding the province make improvements to the healthcare system. In a statement shared exclusively with CBC Toronto, the son of Barry and Honey Sherman says every day since his parents' murder has been a nightmare. He's now offering an additional $25 million reward to whoever has information. Far Morale has the story.
To lose a parent is a difficult thing. But to have both parents taken from you before their time.
Jonathan Sherman speaking 5 years ago at his parents' memorial. That eulogy, given just days after the bodies of Barry and Honey Sherman were taken out of their North York mansion. The billionaire philanthropist couple were found dead in the basement pool area of their house near Bayview and the 401. Autopsy reports found the cause of death as strangulation. Today, communicating with CBC News directly for the first time, their son issued an emotional plea for help in their unsolved murders. In a statement, Jonathan Sherman spoke of the pain he and his family continue to endure, saying, "My parents deserve to enjoy the fruits of their labor and spend their twilight years, as any grandparent should, with their family. I continue to miss my parents more than I can describe, and I am forever haunted by what happened to them." He added, "Closure will not be possible until those responsible for this evil act are brought to justice." Sherman is now increasing the award for information that can lead to an arrest and conviction, adding an additional $25 million. That brings the total reward to $35 million.
I think the kids are doing the right thing by continuing to keep this story alive, the investigation alive, and the pressure alive on law enforcement and the investigation.
Avi Abraham Ben Lolo knew the Shermans well through advocacy and philanthropy in the Jewish community. He says the couple were pillars in the community.
We still don't feel that we have the answers that we need. What happened to them? Who's responsible? We need to bring them to justice.
It's been a year since police have released any major updates. Last December, it released this surveillance video showing a person walking on a sidewalk near the Shermans' home on the day police believed they were killed. It was the first time detectives said they had a suspect.
Toronto police wouldn't speak to us for an interview about the latest developments in the case. They told us in an email it is still an ongoing and active investigation, adding it's committed to resolving the case and bringing closure to the family and friends of Barry and Honey Sherman.
5 years later, closure remains elusive. A son's hope, a greater financial incentive, might bring more answers forward. Farah Morale, CBC News, Toronto.
A fatal stabbing on a TTC subway train and 2 slashings over the weekend. The recent random attacks in the city have left some concerned for their safety. Ali Chiasson spoke with an expert on how crimes like these can have a personal impact.
Do you sort of look over your shoulder a little more? Oh yeah, 100%, for sure. Yeah.
This is a memorial. It marks the spot where Vanessa Korpuska was fatally stabbed inside High Park Station last week. The unprovoked attacker, who was arrested shortly after, was unknown to her or to the other woman he stabbed who survived.
I stand back at the subway, I look to see who's around me, I look to see where the cameras are in the subway. So yeah, I guess I sometimes forget to do that, but these things have reminded me about that.
In the last 48 hours, there have been 2 slashings downtown. One victim was approached from behind and slashed in the face at Dundas and Victoria on Friday. Police believe the same attacker slashed a homeless person sleeping outside at Yonge and Adelaide early Sunday morning. It's just the latest random attack that's got the city on edge.
You aren't really paying attention when you're walking around and someone could just kind of sneak up behind you and attack you. Yeah, so Definitely very random and very scary.
When crimes are random, they have the extra impact of making us all a little more fearful.
Psychology professor Steve Jordan says it weighs on our collective psyche.
Like every morning we wake up and we see things on the news, but we think, oh, that's who they hang out with, or that's what's going on. In the random case, it's like it could be anyone. And that makes it feel a little more personal to us.
Jordan's notes a rise in crime in the last 3 years, including domestic violence. There are several possible root causes, including stresses from the pandemic, causing people to break.
It could be literally living under this stress that's triggering some of these behaviors. And when you combine like poor economic situations or other things, that can turn to anger, and they just want to vent that anger.
If we're seeing it here in Toronto, the trend is likely mirrored in other cities as we trudge through the pandemic and tough economic times.
I do feel that it's not like an overly dangerous city compared to some of the others. I think this is probably just like a random spate of unfortunate attacks that we should see the end to shortly.
The alleged High Park subway attacker, Nang Jia-jin, appears in court on Wednesday, while the downtown slasher suspect is still at large. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
A woman in her 70s was killed when she was struck by a van while crossing the street in Chinatown today. It happened just after 11 this morning near Dundas and Spadina. Police say the driver of the van was making a right-hand turn onto Spadina when he struck the woman. The 73-year-old was pronounced dead at the scene. There's no word on any charges at this time. Anyone with dash cam footage is asked to contact police. And a man is in hospital with life-threatening injuries after a fire under the Gardiner Expressway overnight. It happened just after midnight. Emergency crews were called to the Spadina underpass at the Gardiner Expressway, where they found a tent engulfed in flames. A man who was staying in that tent was rushed to hospital in life-threatening condition, with burns covering about 90% of his body. Investigators are now trying to determine what caused the fire. Dozens of people demonstrated outside a Toronto hospital today, demanding the province make improvements to the healthcare system. They warned against increased privatization. It's as pediatric hospitals continue to treat a surge in children with respiratory viruses. Lorinda Redekop reports.
Oh, hey, hey, ho, ho, Ford's cuts have got to go.
They rallied outside Toronto General Hospital with a message for the government. Healthcare workers seeing the situation in hospitals firsthand are among the people here.
It's nonstop. It's nonstop children with gastrointestinal symptoms and respiratory symptoms, and families are scared.
But he says adult ERs are also overwhelmed.
My patients are waiting 3 to 5 days on ER stretchers to be admitted to hospitals. My patients are waiting 5 hours for basic blood work. My patient in her 90s with a fall and bleeding in her head and a fractured spine, I assessed and reassessed and got a consultation with a specialist, all from a waiting room chair.
The rally was organized by the Ontario Health Coalition. It wants the government to end its court fight over Bill 124, which limits wage increases, including for nurses. It says Doug Ford and his government need to entice retired workers back.
If you're a nurse, if you're a health professional, we need you back. Come back. We'll provide you the supports we need. We'll provide you some control over your schedules. We'll reduce the workloads.
In Collingwood today, the health minister was asked about one case first reported by the Toronto Star about a 4-year-old who had to be flown to Kingston for care 350 kilometers away because nearby hospitals were full.
Look, I get it. It's not ideal as a family to have a child that far away, but it is also important to appreciate that by doing that air transport, that child was able to be assessed and treated sooner.
She says it's an example of hospitals working together. The Premier was asked his advice to Ontarians given the situation in hospitals.
Yeah, go out and get your flu shot. That's the most important.
This doctor's advice for the Premier and Health Minister?
Come spend a night with an ER nurse where I work and see for yourselves what ERs are facing, what patients and families are facing right now.
And as he continued, an Orange Air ambulance landed at Sick Kids at a time when more children are being flown away for care. Lorinda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Pharmacists in Ontario can now prescribe the antiviral medication Paxlovid. Paxlovid is used as a treatment for COVID-19. Prescriptions will come at no cost to patients. There are about 4,000 pharmacists in the province who are already dispensing the drug. Paxlovid is taken orally within 5 days of symptom onset. It's recommended for people at higher risk of COVID-19 complications, including people over 60 and people who are immunocompromised. Meteorologist Colette Kennedy joins us now for a first look at the forecast. And Colette, I still have not adjusted to this cold.
Thanks, Talia. Yeah, you know, we're looking at the daytime highs, and yes, it's December, so okay, it's not that unusual, but the temperatures are below seasonal. We can say that about these values, but when your daytime high's been -5, like in Barrie, and then you have to factor the winds on top of that, and we have more significant wind chills, it feels even cooler. Yeah, it does take some adjusting to, right? But what we do have is, well, we've been seeing that clearing trend started kind of east and pushed back towards the west. As we lose the clouds, it allows the temperature to keep falling off as we go through those overnight hours, but it also means the setup for us is very nice in terms of those sky conditions on Tuesday. A lot of sunshine. Do be aware if you're going to be on the roads, that kind of thing, you're likely going to need some glasses and those sunglasses, those areas that have some snow on the ground because of that glare. Tonight, -7, feeling like -12 with that northerly breeze. And tomorrow afternoon, we may get up to 0, may get up to freezing, but I'm going with -1, still feeling like -5. I do have something coming up this week I want to talk to you about. That'll be when I come back.
Thanks, Colette. CBC projects Liberal candidate Charles Sousa has won the by-election in the coveted GTA riding of Mississauga Lakeshore. Sousa is a well-known former Ontario cabinet minister. The vote is the first contest under the Conservative leadership of Pierre Poilievre. Ron Chinzer was the Conservative candidate. The by-election was triggered when Sven Svenjman announced earlier this year that he was resigning for a job with the UN. The trial of a man charged with the first-degree murder of a Toronto woman in a historic cold case got underway today. Charles Mustard is accused of murdering 41-year-old Barbara Brodkin. She was found stabbed to death in her apartment in March 1993. The case went unsolved for 25 years, but in 2017, advances in DNA technology allowed investigators to re-examine evidence from Brodkin. The Crown telling the judge-alone trial today that Mustard's DNA was found under the victim's fingernails. At the time of her murder, Brodkin was living alone with her 6-year-old son in a Toronto apartment. The Crown alleges the motive for the murder was robbery. The trial resumes on Wednesday. Toronto police holding a private ceremony for a fallen officer today. Constable Andrew Hong was shot and killed in Mississauga earlier this year in what has been characterized as an ambush attack. His name now engraved at police headquarters, honoring his 22 years of service.
Today, Andrew's name joins a terribly long list of noble, brave, and compassionate officers. A list that acts as a daily reminder of the supreme sacrifice made by members of the Toronto Police Service in the performance of their duties.
Dozens of officers, family and friends, and the mayor attended today's plaque ceremony. Hong was a member of Toronto Police's Traffic Motor Squad. He was one of 2 people gunned down in a shooting spree that spanned all the way to Milton in September. The accused died following an interaction with Halton Police in Hamilton. Ontario is updating its computer science and tech curriculum to include more hands-on learning. But one expert says kids also need to learn how the technology landscape is changing. Patrick Swadden explains.
We are proud to announce that today we are modernizing the entire secondary technological education curriculum.
Education Minister Stephen Lecce in Mississauga today announcing some major changes to the province's high school curriculum. He says the last time changes were made to certain computer science and technology courses nearly a decade and a half ago.
Our world has changed significantly since 2008, when the former curriculum was last updated.
He says the update supports the government's plan to focus on skilled trades. A change tech expert Ramona Pringle says is a step in the right direction.
Students are all entering into the same quickly changing world, so we need that push to make sure that everyone is getting a robust education when it comes to technology, computer science.
Pringle says learning hard skills like coding and programming is valuable, but that it's only the beginning. She says children need to learn how the technology landscape is changing.
It really is a fluid era in which, that which the human does and that which the machine does, the line is going to be blurry and it's going to keep on moving on the scale, on the continuum back and forth. And you need to be flexible to re-envisioning what your job is.
She says if curriculum only teaches the tech of the day, it won't have any staying power, and that it needs to focus on the bigger picture.
Hopefully there's some longevity that's built into the way they're thinking about technology education. Hopefully it's a philosophy as much as anything. But I do think this requires constant check-ins.
Lecce says a new computer science curriculum will be implemented next September. The following year, grade 9 and 10 students will be offered an updated tech ed curriculum, which hasn't been adjusted since 2009. Meanwhile, Lecce says the ministry is open to talks about making tech courses a mandatory part of the curriculum. Patrick Swadden, CBC News, Toronto.
The Great Canadian Holiday Baking Show has just wrapped up right here on CBC. We'll issue your warning now. There are spoilers ahead if you aren't caught up. The show's latest winner is a Hamilton woman, and she showed us how to make some holiday treats.
Hey, I'm Mahathi Munluru. I was a finalist on the season 4 of the Great Canadian Baking Show, and most recently I won season 6 Great Canadian Holiday Baking Show. You want it to be a little bit kind of doughy. I'm gonna measure about 35 grams per tart. Going back to the tent for the holiday baking show was incredible. I had the opportunity to bake with 3 other amazing bakers. We're gonna do a French meringue. So we're gonna get our egg whites over here that have already been separated. Bubbles are starting to form, and this is when I will be adding my cream of tartar. Being on the holiday show was awesome. It definitely got me into the holiday mood. I definitely feel ready to host some parties and have some great Christmas bakes happening. You're supposed to be able to put this bowl over your head and nothing falls onto it. So yeah, my hair's clean, right? Today I made some hot chocolate snow globe tarts. It's a nice flaky buttery tart filled with a chocolatey diplomat cream, filled with a nice toasted meringue and a nice snow globe on top. So next up, we're gonna be making our snow globe domes, and we're gonna do that using isomalt. I definitely think everyone should give baking a try. It's so much fun, and honestly, if you're worried about it, don't be. I'm gonna take about a tablespoon of it, and I'm gonna add it into one of these little dome silicone molds. Experiment, just try your best, find your favorite recipe blog, find your favorite cookbook, and just try it, because at the end of the day, baking is what? Butter, sugar, eggs, and flour. It will taste good no matter what. So just give it a try. Even if it's not 100% what you want it to be, it's gonna be pretty good. Just come out, pop out like that. This is definitely just the start of my holiday baking. I'm planning to do a whole bunch of sugar cookies, and my ultimate project is to make a gingerbread kind of cathedral that's about 1 foot tall and long. And the plan is to have cutout windows all along the side, and I'll be using isomalt, sugar, and gelatin sheets to make kind of these beautiful stained glass windows. And voila, here are your snow globe tarts.
There's a live look at the Toronto skyline, a clear evening after a chilly day, sitting at around -4. And let's go back to Colette now for our extended forecast. Colette?
Thanks, Talia. Yes, I want to go through your headlines, but number 3 I want to get to here in a moment because, all right, tomorrow's going to be a cool start after a cool night. It means the morning's very chilly, but sunshine, so really positive in terms of those sky conditions. We continue for the next few days with those temperatures below seasonal, but there it is. This is what I mentioned earlier in the show, that on Thursday, it is not going to be a good travel day in terms of the road conditions. We're going to likely see a mix of things, some rain, then mixing perhaps even some freezing rain in there, and then into some wet snow with accumulation. Now amounts 10, maybe even a little further north of the GTA up to 20 centimeters. Thursday. I'll fine-tune that forecast as we get closer. Let's deal with what's just happening. In terms of our winds, not that strong tonight or into tomorrow. Still, it doesn't take much, 10, 15 kilometers an hour. It does give a wind chill and it knocks that temperature down. I do also just want to point out as we get to late in the day tomorrow, like tomorrow evening, so this is just 3 p.m., but watch what happens into the evening hours. We're going to start to see a push of some stronger gusts, especially just along the lakeshore there, northern lakeshore of Ontario and of Lake Erie back towards southwestern Ontario. So chilly if you do need to be outdoors later in the day tomorrow or even part of the overnight into Wednesday morning. Now we have the sun thanks to high pressure, and we have that through the day for tomorrow. Into Wednesday, too, at least for a good portion of the day. Then we'll see the clouds increasing later in the day, and then we start to get into the setup of what is going to be this next messy mix that's going to be coming in. Again, probably Wednesday overnight having an impact in southwestern Ontario, but it's not going to arrive to the GTA till Thursday. Much more to come on that in your forecast tomorrow, and as we look at it Wednesday as well. Overnight tonight, those temperatures, look at some of these overnight lows and knock another 5 degrees almost so off of that in terms of what your wind chill is going to be like. Tomorrow, -1 to, if we're really lucky, up to 0 for the city. And then tomorrow, or Wednesday, pardon me, -2. And then we get into the windy and messy conditions as that storm comes through on Thursday, Talia.
Finally tonight, some scary-looking critters were spotted roaming the streets of Munich on the weekend. Furry beasts that appear before every Christmas and make the Grinch look like a teddy bear.
Just seeing the different variations on Krampus, it's so fun, and the different size bells and the anticipation of hearing them before you see them. It's incredible.
The Krampus is a figure who scares children who have been naughty, while Santa Claus rewards those who have been nice with treats. Many of the creatures returned this holiday season after staying away for 2 years. They spent much of the pandemic isolating like so many others. And that's our show for you tonight. Thanks so much for watching. Maribel Tarouk has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. And I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Good night.